Chair will recognize himself. Dr. Jassa, thank you for your testimony. You listened to the testimony of Mr. Bledsoe and Mr. Behe. I would ask you, do you see these as isolated cases, or is it part of a systemic problem in the Muslim American community? And if it is, how would that be impacted as far as mosques, as far as care, and as far as overseas funding?
Chairman King, I can't underscore how important this question is. Is this simply anecdotes like a crime problem, or is there a systemic problem? Now, first thing we need to say is that the vast majority of mosques are places that all of our families go worship, patriotic Americans like every other cross-section of America, and not only are they not a threat, but would report anything that they see. Having said that, though, we have a problem internally. Where is that? It's a minority, but there's an ideology that exists in some mosques. Not all, not a majority, but in some mosques, and it's a significant number. And what I'm talking about is not the violent part. We need to change that paradigm from simply talking about violence. It is about that separatism, that idea that the Islamic State takes precedence, Islamic law takes precedence over American law. So if you look, for example, mosques that I've seen a sermon in Phoenix, where one of the largest mosques, they held up one of CARE's pictures, and the picture said something extremely insulting about American soldiers and what they're doing in Iraq. And you can't tell me that that doesn't have an impact upon radicalizing Muslims at that mosque. Now, is that free speech? Absolutely. Do their civil rights need to be protected? Absolutely. But there should have been a huge protest from people in that mosque that what he did violated and offended us as Americans. But there wasn't. There was silence. So I think it's time, and this platform that we have here and on should be a platform to awaken the silent Muslim majority that exists there, that love this country, to start to do some self-repair rather than turning a blind eye and pointing fingers to other faiths. Funding is also an issue. There's a lot of consolidation of thought within mosques. And one of the other things I think is important for the committee to understand is that our population is extremely diverse. But yet in this country, the groups that seem to represent us are those that are mobilized based on being an Islamic lobby, which is really part of political Islam. Most of our families left that political Islamic party mentality in the Middle East and came here to be part of a political infrastructure that separates church and state. So to say that, well, how do we engage those Muslims? Where are they? They're hard to get to because they don't want to be involved in Islamic or Muslim organizations because they separate mosque and state. So I think it's important that we make that distinction. Now, looking at the Islamists as a group, again, not all, violence is a small part of their mentality. But yet, as you look at the bigger part, they facilitate the concept that the Islamic State is supremacist, is better, Islamic law should be part of government. All this needs reform, and only we can do that. And some of the mosques, for example, get funding and have a common source of ownership called the North American Islamic Trust, listed as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial. They hold deed to they quote 300 mosques on their website, some say up to 50% of mosques, and yet if you look at some of the teachings that the Islamic Society of North America and a few others endorse, they're associated, and I put this in my testimony, some of their imams are associated with the Assembly of Muslim Jurists of America. So along with some of that funding that came originally from petrodollars in the 70s, comes, I think, an ideology that is pervasive with Wahhabism, which is a fundamentalist Islamist strain, or Islamism as an entity, or political Islam. Very different from Islam as a faith, I believe. We still have to go through that enlightenment process and that reform, but you can't disconnect the funding. And there have been committees in this House that have studied that. The Judiciary Committee in the Senate studied the funding issue of mosques in 2003. I think that is a whole other issue. But I do think along with it comes apologetics, a lack of reform, and a sense of basically trying to evangelize Islam rather than trying to internalize American ideals into our faith, which is two different things. So it's a significant problem.
Thank you, Dr. Jassa. In my final seconds, Mr. Bledsoe, I was very moved by your testimony. In the lead up to this hearing was attacked by everybody from CARE to Kim Kardashian to the New York Times as being such a dangerous moment that we're going to have here today. Why did you come to testify? What do you hope your testimony will bring about? And what is your opinion of this hearing?
I think it's very necessary for this hearing to be. I think that, as you can see, a lot of people still in denial that we even have a problem in America with radicalization. I came here to speak to the American people. I wanted to say something on the behalf of my son and my grandson, which is 9 months old, hoping that he don't get caught up in that same trap, get captured by that same hunter that my son got caught up in. I also wanted to say to the American people that I hope that my coming here today, there's someone out there in the world, in America, that could hear my story and learn something from the radicalization stages and the process of radicalization, that they can catch some of that which I did not understand at the time my son was being processed and radicalized, hoping that some other child or some other parent can understand and save that child. If I can save one other child from going through what my family gone through or the victim family went through, then I think my trip here to this committee was worthwhile.
Thank you, Mr. Bledsoe, and I'm privileged to recognize the distinguished ranking member from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson.